Hello, we are the Murder of Crones, and we like to talk about the patriarchy, feminism, and look at it through an intersectional lens. I am your host, Sabrina.
I'm Kori.
And I'm Jen.
So, on today's episode, we're going to talk about the erasure of the goddess. So, for many, many years, I've pondered this exact thing. Why is it that women are vilified? Why is it not okay for women to grow older? Why are women looked at and thought of as gold diggers? It just goes on and on, the derogatory messaging around women, our bodies. And I wanted to know, where did this all start? And I have always in my mind, I've had little pieces of things that I knew about. But in doing this and putting this podcast episode together, it put the pieces together for me and gave me a more well-rounded view of how we ended up where we are today. And so I hope that this will do the same for all of you. So let's get into it.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
So what do you guys think?
I like it. Off kilter, on point. I like it.
Guys, what does that mean?
No, seriously, what does it mean?
Okay. So I think the deepest cultural wound in human history is the erasure of the goddess. Across cultures, we see patterns of women being recast as sinners, temptresses, or being treated like they are of lesser importance, while their true roles as leaders, healers, warriors, and teachers were erased. We will discuss the negative impacts of this erasure on both the masculine and the feminine, because I believe it created an imbalance it creates an imbalance when we lose the yin and the yang in society. So to understand this, we need to look at how matriarchal and egalitarian societies functioned, how their stories shifted under patriarchal rewriting, and how we can reimagine balance today. Right? What do you guys think about that? You intrigued?
That's good.
I think that's huge.
It's huge. And I really didn't realize how huge of a topic I had picked when I
Oh my
initially
gosh.
picked it.
Yeah, you're looking at thousands of years of history. And like you
Yeah.
said,
Well,
like
yeah.
religious orders, governmental systems, like there's so much to this. And
Oh, yeah.
power, right?
Yeah, theologians will spend their whole life studying this topic alone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
This is
Yeah.
PhD dissertation level, Sabrina.
Yeah. Way to go big. Way to go big.
go big or go home, as they say. I did a lot of head scratching, a lot of looking things up, a lot of talking to people that I know that are,
Yeah.
religious. It's been quite a journey. And yeah, I'm excited to share what I've learned with both
I'm
of
just
you.
picturing you doing a whole lot of, wait, what? Wait, huh?
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
hang on.
Yeah.
Just,
And then
oh
like
gosh.
backing up the bus and being like, well, what does that even mean? Like, and
Yeah.
like looking
Yeah.
up definitions, like, I think that religion has its own jargon. So there was a lot of things that I wasn't, completely clear on what the meaning was.
Yeah.
So
Especially if you're not raised
that's
in the
been,
church or with any religion.
mhm. So the first woman that I encountered when I started digging and trying to get to the beginning of all of this was Mary Magdalene. Now, what a fascinating topic she is. So, let's see, where do we start here? Mary Magdalene was a respected teacher and perhaps the closest disciple of Jesus. Her legacy was altered in 591 CE when Pope Gregory I decided and declared her a prostitute. So he declares her a prostitute. He had no scriptural evidence of this, so essentially, he was a big fat liar pants. We'll say. Yeah,
That's
he totally
interesting.
lied. Mhm.
That's super interesting. I actually didn't know that that's where the story of Mary being a prostitute, like I have heard of her as a teacher, and I've heard
Mhm.
of her as one of Jesus's close disciples. Um, I've not heard, like I knew that obviously she was listed as a prostitute, but I didn't realize that that was actually just a pope had declared it such.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Isn't it always?
Yeah.
I know someone's
Right.
just like, we don't
Yeah,
want a woman in the Bible.
exactly.
She's there. We're not going to be able to get where we're going with this agenda we got here.
Yeah, I
So
know.
we're just gonna,
Equality
you know,
among the sexes, horrifying.
right.
Mhm.
Right. So, this reinterpretation stripped away her authority, tarnished her memory, and served the early church's agenda to put male authority at the forefront of society by discrediting women's voices for over 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Okay, this was
I would say more than that.
very
Like if that's 500, it's not like women have a whole lot of say in the church these days. That's still a struggle, right?
well.
Like,
There, the church
yeah.
recanted though, so we'll get to that, but you'll see. So, but you
Okay.
may be right. I came across several interesting books on this topic. The one that stood out to me was written by Megan Watterson. It's called Mary Magdalene Revealed. It's this book here. It's a really interesting read. I've not all the way through it yet, to be honest, but yeah, and it's been really interesting. It's not a quick read, that's for certain.
hmm
And, in this book, Megan Watterson seeks to restore Mary's position of authority and spirituality. This is a thought provoking book, to say the least. Megan wasn't alone in her curiosity around Mary Magdalene. A gal named Karen King wrote extensively about Mary Magdalene and her role in early Christianity. In her book, The Gospel of Mary of Magdala, Jesus and the First Woman Apostle, Karen King wanted people to know the mistruths that were told about Mary Magdalene and asks us to rethink the authority of the church. Mary's portrayal as a prostitute is not the truth about her life or how she lived. The rewriting of Mary Magdalene was a political strategy by none other than the Pope. So, boom. Now,
That's super
Mary,
interesting.
I know, right? So Mary Magdalene's story is fascinating to me because her scripture invites us to reclaim spiritual authority and to love what's always present within us. Mary's gospel is about the divine feminine's perspective. Everything about her challenges conventional patriarchal religious narratives.
Hmm.
I wonder why they got rid of it.
Yeah,
What's
geez.
why wouldn't they
Figure.
want that in the Bible?
Yeah. So my husband saw me reading this book and he was like, "Why are you reading a religious book? You don't even believe in the Bible. What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, you know, I believe that in order to understand what happened to the goddess, what happened to femininity in society, that I need to learn about this. Believe it or not, it's what shaped the
Yeah.
world that we live in today, right? It's shaped
Yeah.
everything." So
Yeah.
with that, he was like, "Okay, fair enough."
Yeah.
I think he was
That's
worried I was going to
exactly why
start going
I
into,
did it.
yeah.
Yeah. Like when I had the same thing, like, 'cause I wasn't raised religious and, I didn't really have any biblical education at all. And I was an avid reader and I was like, they're constantly making references to biblical stories, to biblical characters, to biblical teachings. Like Christianity is everywhere around us. It's embedded into our society. We celebrate Christmas, we celebrate Easter. Like it is so entrenched in Western American culture, right? And European
hmm
culture that I was like, I feel like I'm kind of blind to a whole aspect of our life And so I just wanted to do exactly what you're saying, Zab, like just to have the knowledge, right? I just wanted to read the
to
Bible and
understand.
know what's the deal? Like why does everybody, like what is everyone talking about? And yeah, so and it's true, like it's really helped me in studying history and like teaching my students and understanding some of their religious beliefs for my
Well,
religious
I mean, the
students, and
Bible
also
is
like
the most read book in the world, right? It's the most
yeah
read book in the world. And how tragic that the feminine has been removed.
It's the
yeah
Right?
most misinterpreted book in the world.
Mm-hmm.
yeah
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
well, and this is the
Yeah, so
thing is
super. Go ahead.
yeah well, I was just like I was just thinking it's misinterpreted. Like I personally believe the Bible is largely stories of metaphor, not necessarily fact. It's
Verbatim.
parables and tales and metaphors about life and how to live and how to be moral.
Mm-hmm.
And so like those are always open to interpretation, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
always what's the message you take from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah. Was it
like
meant to be
some of
taken
the tales are
literally?
contradictory. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Right?
And I know like
So,
religious people would push back, but
yeah. Yeah, of course. And we're, we are not theologians. We are just three
mm-mm.
women
Yeah,
learning together.
with
So,
opinions.
with opinions. That's right. Big opinions. Not just three women. Did I say just? I shouldn't have said that. Maybe, I don't know if I did or
It's all
not,
right,
but
you're
we
forgiven.
are three
You
women.
know
We
what?
are three women. Three empowered women. Three empowered badass women. That's
Learning to be aware of
what
our
we
language
are.
about ourselves.
That's
That's
right.
amazing.
Yes, we're empowering ourselves. So one of the interesting things about Mary Magdalene's ancient manuscript is that it has 3 copies have only ever been found, and they were all
Mhm.
found in Egypt. And the first 6 pages of all 3 of those manuscripts are missing, as well as 4 pages in the middle. And we'll never know what those said,
Hmm.
right? But isn't that
Wow.
Oh, that's so
interesting?
frustrating.
Yeah. So, um, so there were
Hmm.
3 copies that were
Those seem very
discovered.
specific omissions.
She was
Oh,
talking about the
very
Pope, no doubt.
specific. Yeah. And it was destroyed 3 times before it was finally
Yeah.
printed in 1955. So, yeah, it was buried for a long time. And now there are copies that reside of it in Berlin, Germany, Manchester, UK, and Oxford, UK. Now,
Can
this is
I
the
interrupt for 1
interesting part.
second?
You can. I love how you're leaning
I
in.
just think of the audacity. Could you imagine if you found Holy Scripture, original ones, and to be like, I'm gonna rip out some pages because I don't want, like the audacity of
My
being like,
God,
if you
shit like that
believe,
happens all the time. That
right?
doesn't
But I'm like,
surprise
if
me
you
at all.
actually were religious, and I'm assuming the people that are protecting the message of the church are the people that are deeply invested in this. But if you truly believe that this is an apostle and you are altering her words,
Yeah.
like to me, I'm like,
Well,
wow, that's rich.
Thus enter
that's when the
religion is
erasure
control,
begins,
right?
right? Like, so brutal. So brutal.
Yeah,
So,
crazy.
it is crazy. So, this is interesting. In 1969, the Catholic Church formally removed the association of Mary Magdalene with the sinful woman mentioned in the Gospel of Luke. This reversed what Pope Gregory I had said about her. So in 1969, the church recants Pope Gregory I's statement that
Okay.
Mary Magdalene was a prostitute because now this manuscript is out. Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Gets even better.
Sorry.
In 2016, Pope Francis elevated her feast day to the same level as the apostles, calling her
Hmm.
apostle to the apostles. restoring some of her original dignity. He recognized her significance as the first to spread the news of the resurrection.
Interesting.
That's major.
That's actually
She's
like,
an
that's
apostle
super major.
to the apostles. Yeah. So the apostles, like, if you don't know, Kori, I looked it up. They were kind of like Jesus's bros, you know? But turns out there's a woman that
Yeah.
actually was in front of
Second
them.
bunch. Yeah.
That's so significant. And I'd never
Yeah.
heard about this before writing this. Wow.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
crazy.
curious, like, that was in 2016, Pope Francis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what is the political agenda behind that?
Well,
I'm
I think
curious.
that
And
that
I
there's
apologize in that I'm pretty religious illiterate.
yeah,
And I'm really
I couldn't
skeptical.
say.
It's religion.
Yeah, I couldn't say why it was done, but what I will say is that I don't think there was a choice. It's like
In what
acknowledging
way?
residential schools and what was done in them. Once you find a sacred manuscript belonging to Mary Magdalene and people start having access to that, it becomes glaringly clear that she wasn't a prostitute, that she held significant status with Jesus,
Okay. So there's
right?
just no denying it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too,
Yeah.
like from my limited understanding of Catholicism, my understanding is that like Pope Francis was like, as far as that goes, a pretty woke pope, right? Like he was a pretty
Yeah.
liberal,
Absolutely.
left-wing kind of a pope. If somebody was going to do it, it was going to be him. Because obviously, like if they found those manuscripts and they in the 1950s they're being restored, they've had 50 years, 60 years to do this, right? And they have not. So the fact that Pope Francis actually made this change means that he recognized the injustice. But I also know, like I've read a little bit about the selection of the new pope, and there were some really, really divisive factions following Pope Francis's death because he did some things that were super unpopular in the like very like there were some very traditional sects that were really not happy with some of his moves. And that's like I don't know enough to like speak in details. I just read like an article that I was like, oh, fascinating. Who knew the drama in the church? But
It is
yeah, that
fascinating.
he had done some wild things. Yeah, like it's a
Well, I
whole
was
other political
interested in
system, right? That I don't really know
it
that much
is.
about.
And it's like, why hasn't the
So have
Bible
they
been
corrected?
rewritten? Right? Why hasn't the Bible been rewritten? That was the other
Yeah.
thing. But I learned that the canon is closed and there's no way to open it to change it.
Yeah, which is like
Is
weird
what I
because
read.
that's also rules made up by humans, right? Like the church makes up that rule,
Exactly.
the humans make up that rule. That doesn't have to stay, right?
No,
It's like
I know.
saying that the Constitution it can't be amended, and it's like, well, yeah, but we do amend it. Like this, humans make these things up. Humans can unmake them.
Well, do you know what the canon is? I'm not even certain what that means.
I think the canon are the books of the like the books that make up the Bible. So you've got the Old Testament and the New Testament, and so there's the books that are written by the various different apostles. Like there's the book of Luke, there's the book of Matthew, the book of Mark, the book of Paul. Like there's all those different. There's Revelations.
Okay.
That I think is what they consider the canon. My potentially very ignorant understanding, but that's what I understand to be the canon. So what they're saying is they can't like add the book of Mary into this because that's not what they consider to be the Bible that all of their doctrine and teachings are based on. I think what they're really saying is they would have to revamp a whole lot of their religious teachings, their religious practice, and it would be very, very disruptive, which is absolutely true. It would be, right? It would be super divisive.
And I
That doesn't mean
have
it
a
shouldn't
little
be
bit
done.
of stuff here. It also says that because her manuscript isn't complete, there's fragments missing. Oh, how interesting. So if we're going to pull pieces out of
seems
it,
to be
and then it can't be
consistently missing
used.
these like chunky pages.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you know what they could
That's
also do
interesting.
is they could also, because hers is not the only one that's gone missing, right? There are other books written by females at the time that have gone missing or have been found, and they
Shocking.
are not canon, right? They're not considered canon. And by not just females, by males, like there's the Dead Sea Scrolls. Many of them are biblical texts, they believe, written by people at the time, like at least maybe not quite at the time of Jesus Christ, but surrounding the time, because most of the books in the Bible were written, several hundred years to 1,000 years after his death, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they are supposed to be sort of recordings of his life and his teachings and his ministry. So there's a lot of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the stuff that they're finding that are like preserved. So this is one of the cool things, is like the Book of Mary. It's not necessarily a done deal. They found 3 copies. There could be another one, because as the sea dries,
There could be a
they're
complete one.
finding,
Yeah.
right? They're finding things like preserved in that silty clay at the bottom of those, like in the Dead Sea, that's coming
those
up, and they're
pages
like,
got to
oh,
be somewhere, right? The pages got to be
they've got to be
somewhere. Like,
somewhere.
you don't take
Yeah.
those
I'm sure they were
pages and not
out.
put them somewhere. They're somewhere. Come
Yeah,
on, Mary.
yeah. I bet
Yeah.
you they preserved
Yeah.
them too, because like if you were
You better
a
believe they're
religious person, like, yeah, bad enough to rip them out, but think of the sacrilege of burning them or destroying them, right? You preserve them, put them
Yeah.
away, and hope they never see the light of day.
It's also
So
interesting,
that would
isn't
be
it? Like, even
fascinating.
what's on those pages? Like, that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, like
I'm,
what was so
I'm,
threatening to the church?
Yeah.
Like,
but then, like,
I
why
don't know,
not
like
get rid of the
I even,
manuscripts altogether? Why not? Like, why preserve them if they didn't want
yeah,
them to ever be found? But then maybe they were saved by someone, like,
Mhm.
that's an
like
interesting,
hidden
but the
by
fact that they've ripped out
other
certain
women.
pages or
But maybe
scholars
that
that were
happened
like, this
before
is,
the women. Yeah, I don't know. Like, maybe,
I mean, I think
maybe, I don't know.
throughout history, there have been people who are like, I know this challenges our entire belief system, but it is still
Mhm.
something we have to reckon with, right? Like we have to, and they've been
Yeah.
like, the truth matters more to them than upholding the system. There's always those people there, right? And
Thank goodness.
yeah, thank goodness, right? So I wouldn't be surprised
Yeah.
if there were some people there that were like, we can't destroy these. Like this has to be kept. We don't necessarily have to put it into our Bible, but it has to be kept. It
Yeah,
is
obviously the
testament
church
to the
didn't
life of
know about
Jesus
these
and his
copies.
ministry.
Yeah, they obviously
Yeah.
didn't know about that these copies existed. And I mean, it's not to say that these were
Yeah.
the only 3 copies that ever existed. I'm sure, because I think the fact that they were found in Egypt,
Yeah.
because of the dryness of the climate, they were preserved well there for that reason.
Yeah.
So there could have been copies other places that, had completely deteriorated because of the climate that they had been kept in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's
That's
hope the
totally
missing
true.
pages are
Well, the
somewhere in
fact that it was
Egypt.
copied 3 times, like what you had to do in the, like when you were spreading that, is that you had to hand copy everything, right? So the fact that it was
Oh,
being
yeah.
copied meant that it was being distributed, it was being read and taught. So
Mhm.
to me, that says more than 3 times. It would have gone places. They would have been, because like the initial job of the apostles following the death of Jesus was to spread his teachings and spread his ministry so that it would grow, right? So they traveled
Mhm.
all over Africa, all over the Middle East, all over Europe, trying to, well, I don't know how far they made it into Europe, but anyway, their job was to spread the teaching. So they would have been copying books, leaving copies behind for people to continue learning and studying
Mhm.
and referring back to the teachings,
Interesting.
right? So if she was traveling around with her teachings, right, like that, anywhere she went, they would have made copies of her teachings. So you're absolutely right. Probably many of them just got destroyed in climate, or depending on what they were copied on. But I mean,
So
they also used to
interesting.
write on hide, and hide holds up pretty good, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. True.
There's hope.
Yes.
there's hope.
Very interesting. So all of this got me thinking, was what happened to Mary Magdalene an isolated incident in being not about her manuscript, but more about her being lied about? Her, her story, her legacy being tarnished, and she was called a prostitute. And so I started research that. And it turns out, no, she's not alone. And I'll give you some examples. So there's
Color me shocked.
Pandora in Greek myth.
Mm.
She opens a jar and releases all evil into the world. There's Lilith, Adam's first wife. She refused to lie beneath him during sex. She was depicted as a demonic figure in Jewish folklore. There was Eve in the Hebrew Bible. She was blamed for humanity's fall. She was dubbed as the one who sinned first, making her the root of female weakness. And this is something interesting I learned about Eve, because we all are familiar with Eve and the story of Adam and Eve. Eve's name actually translates to living one or the source of life. How does that track?
Interesting.
Right? Think about that,
Interesting.
you know? And people, Eve would have been named very purposefully. She was created by God, was she not?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how is it that the living one and the source of life is also blamed for humanity's downfall? Right? So
Right.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I digress. So then there's Delilah and Jezebel in the Old Testament. Delilah betrays Samson through seduction, and Jezebel becomes the symbol of manipulation and sexual immorality. They were considered dangerous women who led men astray. Then there's, of course, Mary Magdalene, Phoebe, and Priscilla. They were all erased and portrayed as simple women by Pope Gregory I. So I didn't get into who Phoebe and Priscilla are, but I'm sure they've got a very interesting story as well. Then we get into the witch hunts. Okay. And that was deeply tied to Christianity, particularly the Catholic Church and later the Protestant churches. Women were accused of making pacts with the devil, luring men into sin, often midwives, healers, or outspoken women. Female sexuality and knowledge was a threat. Then we get into the Victorian era, where we have the femme fatale emerges in art and literature. Salome was painted as a seductive destroyer of John the Baptist. Later, Victorian novels often portrayed women as danger wrapped in beauty. And then there's modern echoes of all of this in pop culture. There's the vamp, the femme fatale again shows up, the Black Widow, patriarchal messaging about bad women ruining good men, gold diggers, seductresses, or Eves linger in media, politics, and church rhetoric. So after looking at all that, it seemed pretty clear to me that what all of these women had in common certainly wasn't sin. It was that they were a product of erasure. This is an attempt to strip women of their original roles as life givers, oracles, and leaders and enforce their silence and gain control. Thought?
And it goes on and on and on and on.
Yeah, that's just a few
You
examples.
see this a lot in
Right?
history. Like most female leaders are either erased or vilified, right? Sorry, my husband is turning on a loud machine. Can you guys hear the machine in the background? No. Okay, good. So
We're okay.
yeah, like there's throughout the ages, like even think about like Cleopatra, right? Like she's kind of painted as this like seductress, this woman who like slept her way to the top kind of thing. Like, she slept with Julius
Yeah.
Caesar, and like she was brilliant. She was like a didact. She could speak multiple languages. She was like, super powerful leader in her own right. But history has her as like the wife of, right? As opposed to, I mean, we recognize her as leader of Egypt, but the fact that she was fighting off the Roman Empire at its peak under Julius Caesar, under Marcus Antony, and like she's holding the reins and they are trying actively to invade. And the only way they can gain control of Egypt is through alliance with her, right? because she's holding that territory, right? That she's just like one example. Like there's been famous Korean queens and Hawaiian queens, and there's like, that have had incredible impact and been extremely successful. And they either get vilified as horrible people, or they're forced to erase the history, erase themselves, and be silent, right? So
Yeah, I know, right? It's so interesting.
it's
So
not
my next
surprising.
question, yeah, it's not surprising. So the next thing that came up for me was before the patriarchy. And I kind of knew the answer to this, but I wanted to take a deeper dive into everything that I thought I knew, right? So I thought before the patriarchy led me to wonder if there were other societies before the patriarchy rose that were matriarchal and revered, celebrated. And furthermore, I wanted to know if there were women warriors. And I'll explain why I wondered that as well, my sort of train of thought as we move along. So the answer to that is yes, there was. In old Europe and other regions, they featured goddess-centered spirituality. Archaeologist Maria Gimbutas uncovered symbols of fertility, female power, and earth-centered worship. These societies were often more egalitarian and less militaristic than the patriarchal warrior cultures that followed. And an interesting fact that in that time, women followed a different calendar, one based not on the sun, but on the moon. It had 13 months and 28 days, mirroring the menstrual cycle. Rion Eisler in The Chalice and the Blade note, quote, the earliest societies were not male-dominated warrior cultures, but partnership cultures where the divine was female and power meant creation, not destruction, end of quote. There are lots of other examples of societies that were matriarchal. The Iroquois Confederacy, each clan was headed by a clan mother, the senior woman of the lineage. She had authority to nominate, advise, and even remove chiefs if they did not serve the people well. Chiefs were always men, but they served at the will of women. Women owned the longhouses and the fields. They were in charge of planting, harvesting, and distribution of corn, beans, and squash, which is where the Three Sisters planting comes from. And I think I said at the beginning of this, I kind of messed up it. I wasn't looking to see if they were just matriarchal societies. It was just societies where the feminine was revered and held leadership roles. So now in the Iroquois Confederacy, the women had direct control over food security, and the society was matrilineal, which means the children belonged to the mother's clan, not the father's. Inheritance of name, roles, and property passed through the woman's line. Women decided whether the nation went to war or not. Another example is in the Crete Minoan civilization. The religion was deeply goddess-centered. Archaeological finds show figurines of the snake goddess, mother goddess, and priestesses, often depicted with bare breasts, snakes and birds, symbols of fertility, renewal, and life. No image of male rule or no images of male rulers have been found to date. This suggests religious and possibly political leadership was dominated by women or balanced to be more like egalitarian, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In Norse mythology, they remember shield maidens who fought alongside men. These figures challenged the narrative that women were always passive, which I think is interesting. They remind us that wholeness requires embracing strength as well as nurture. In West Africa, in the 17th century, the Dahomey kingdom had entire armies of women warriors, the Agoji. They were an all-female military. They served as the king's personal guard. European observers called them the Dahomey Amazons, but that was a colonial label. They were known locally as the Agoji or Mino, which means our mothers, which is so interesting because they were these fierce warriors, but they were also known as the mother, right? Like the masculine and feminine can work, you know, they can be intertwined in each gender, right?
You know what I think about when I think about that is the animal kingdom. Almost universally, the most feared is the female, right? In lions, like, okay, the males are bigger. You don't mess with a female lion, right? And even the males, you don't mess with them. Horses, it's the mares you've got to watch out for. Like, sure, stallions can be aggressive and they'll fight each other, but the mares are the ones who protect the herd. They are the ones who are going to fight off danger. They are the ones who are going to, like, you know, gather everybody up. They form a circle around the young. Female dogs, like, you know, like males are typically the bigger, the sort of, they'll be the external fight protection, but the females are the one who like gather up, provide safety, and will fight to the death for the young, for the population, right?
Absolutely.
So to me, when you think about those African warriors, the Domi, that's amazing. Like, and it, like, to me, that resonates. Like, calling them mothers is like, yeah, you've never met somebody who's going to fight so hard as a mom, right? Like, she is going to fight until she dies. And so
I love that.
To me, that really resonates, right? Like, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I'd be calling them too.
Yeah. And these warriors, they lived in the royal kingdom. They were expected to be celibate, dedicating their lives to the kingdom. They trained rigorously using firearms and machetes, and they were absolutely ferocious warriors. They could own land, wealth, and power that many men could not, and they embodied a fusion of both the feminine and the masculine. And an interesting thing that I found out about them is the Mino used machetes that had 3-foot blades that could cut a man in half with a single swing.
Wow.
You know, they also had
But don't
a
piss them
foldable
off.
blade that served, as a giant straight razor. Yeah,
Oh
like
my
you weren't
gosh.
gonna mess with these. Yeah. Yeah, so interesting, right? And by the late 19th century, the Dahomey was colonized by the French. The Agoji fought fiercely in the wars between 1890 and 1894, but were eventually defeated. Their legacy survived in oral history, and in 2022, they inspired the film The Woman King. Have you guys seen that film?
No.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah, it's so good. I really encourage you to watch that. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, The Woman King. Mike and I watched it together. Really, really good. So, the answer to the question, obviously, is history is filled with women who embodied both feminine and masculine archetypes, and they remind us that wholeness requires embracing both. Yeah.
I wonder
So,
if
ahead.
war looked a little differently in matriarchal societies. Like to go to war, what the like how it must have been pretty bad, right? Because I figure women would have more room for discussion, more room for I don't know, just trying to make it work, more compromise,
Diplomacy.
more diplomacy around it.
Yeah.
So I wonder how that changed the tapestry of war, right?
Well,
Yeah,
in
and I
those
think too,
in those times they were much less likely to go to war because of the female aspect.
I wonder if like I think it's one of our biases that we assume that women are less warlike and men are more war inclined, but I do think that we women are socially designed to be networkers, right? Because our most of our society is about the village, the raising of the children, cooperative care, right? And men are more able to do side by side work, hunting. They will hunt in groups, but they can be a little bit individualistic. So I think there's a sort of natural bent for a more individualistic versus a more socialistic makeup. But I wonder if I just wonder about a clash of societies in these cases. Like we talk about the French colonizing this area and coming into conflict with these warriors. I wonder how often their need to go to war was caused by patriarchal societies coming into contact with matriarchal societies not respecting the
Right.
Of
Yeah.
course.
female, the warrior, not
Yeah.
seeing that as strength, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know
Yeah,
that like
of course.
Boudica, a famous female, like queen, general, whatever you want to call her, went to war with, like, led her, I believe it was the Picts, somewhere in sort of England. Gosh, I'm going to say the Picts. Somebody will correct me, but Boudica led her people against the Romans, right? And the Romans are a very patriarchal society. So, you know, and I honestly don't know actually the makeup of her society. I just know she was a queen, she was a warrior, she was a kick butt fighter, and she really put paid to the Romans. Like she really fought viciously. And I just wonder how often they're put in a place where there's no other option than battle because the
Yeah.
Yeah.
patriarchal forces won't listen
Mm-hmm.
and won't
Yeah, and that
won't
makes
deal
sense,
with a woman.
right? Because when you think about the mother energy, they're not going to want to harm their people unless it's absolutely necessary. So
Yeah, there's
yeah,
a steep cost.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. So yeah, okay. So now it's kind of like, you know, why do you think the patriarchy erased the goddess? You know, like, and I think like the shift to patriarchy was definitely political. We see that from Pope Gregory the First. Right? Definitely has a political agenda there. And by rebranding women as temptresses, like Eve, or prostitutes like Magdalene, religious and political systems reinforced male dominance. In order to do this, male priesthoods needed a male god, right? So things start to become a little bit clearer when you start knowing this history, right? And you start looking at these things. Gerda Lerner, an Australian born American historian and women's author, wrote in The Creation of the Patriarchy, quote, "Patriarchy is a historic creation, not a biological destiny. By controlling stories, men controlled social order. It's not
Mm-hmm.
universal. There are and always have been cultures that honor women, goddesses, and feminine power. But in many societies that went on to dominate globally, the woman was looked at as the downfall. The repetition is less about human nature and more about cultural power structures that want women's authority diminished." End of quote. And she
Mm-hmm.
was just an incredible feminist historian. And she passed away in 2023 at 92 years of age. I really recommend looking at her work. Very, very incredible. So the temptress, sinner, woman archetype is widespread and is strongest in patriarchal systems. Many indigenous, African, and goddess-centered cultures kept women as sacred leaders, prophets, and goddesses. Adrienne Rich, an incredibly influential feminist poet, once said, quote, "The connections between and among women are the most feared, the most problematic, and the most
Mm-hmm.
potentially transforming force on the planet." End of quote.
Yeah.
And that was in her book, The Midnight Savage. I love that.
Yeah,
I mean, doesn't that
that's
just like
great.
encompass so much? It's so,
Yeah, that's it,
yeah,
it in a
profound.
nutshell.
It really is,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it? So then my next question
I
was
think,
like, okay, go, yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I think about that with the erasure of the goddess, that I think so much of this has to do with the fear of women's power, especially power over men, right?
Mm-hmm.
They know that they are susceptible to seduction. They are susceptible to being led astray, quote unquote, and fearing that power and their own weakness makes them, and their own susceptibility makes men fear women, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like also the fact that we know, like a lot of women know they have the power to seduce and control men.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, that's terrifying, I think, if you're trying to
Yeah.
maintain your own
And I
power.
guess and I think the thing with that too is like, I think that women have been also taught that that's the only place they have power
Yeah.
is to
Yeah.
seduce men.
That's the only way. Yeah, it's your only
Yeah.
access. Like if we could go straight to government or something and we didn't need to resort to, I guess you could call it manipulation, but it's also, I think it is potentially a biological situation where we need a protector that wants to protect us if we are if we're heavily pregnant, if we are in labor, if we have small children, we will of course defend ourselves, but we're vulnerable. We need somebody that will stay with us and protect us. And the way that happens is by creating these close bonds. And I think it is a survival mechanism for women to be able to create a sense of bond with a man, make a man care about you, feel protective towards you, want to stay with you when potentially they're not getting much sexual benefit from it, right? Like you're late pregnant or you're having a baby and they're not getting the general things, but the connection and the bond, I think that's a biological safety mechanism for women. But you're right, that we absolutely have been taught that that's the only way we have power. And it's not true.
And we're so much more
I'd be
powerful,
curious.
right?
I'd be curious to know in matriarchal societies how many of them were polyamorous as well.
Yeah.
So they had multiple partners because there wasn't that necessity to have someone looking out for you. It was more of a community setting, and you didn't need to have one partner who would be that protector for you.
For sure.
Well, that's another
also think
patriarchal construct.
Yeah. Ownership, right? As opposed to freedom. And I know like a lot of indigenous societies didn't have that same idea of like controlling their partner. I think because many of them had, even if you weren't strictly matrilineal, like in the Cowichan Valley here, the Cowichan tribes, I don't believe they're a matrilineal tribe, but they have strong value of the women in their culture. They are considered fierce. They are considered very powerful. They are knowledge keepers. They are very, very important and dangerous to disrespect. So, and I could be wrong. Maybe they are matrilineal, but I don't think so. But anyway, that controlling those women becomes much more risky, right? Like you have to have thing. But I was thinking, Kori, to your point about the matriarchal societies, is I was really wondering too what that meant for men embracing the feminine. Like we're looking at women embracing the masculine, but I think it opens up both sides, right? That men, if women are strong, it's not shameful to embrace your femininity, right? Then it's not, it's just a different type of strength where you're allowed to embrace your feminine, right? Which I think must have been so liberating, and also probably reduced a lot of that anger, resentment, because you have to cut yourself in half. Men in our society, they have to be divided in half, and you can't acknowledge that part, right? Otherwise you're weak.
Yeah.
It's so like you could do this whole thing on men embracing the feminine.
Oh, so absolutely. So my next thought was kind of like, why didn't women fight back more? Like, how did we find ourselves where we are today? I just thought, like, this is a fair question.
That's a great question.
Yeah,
that's a great question.
So,
because we were maimed and murdered and raped and overpowered physically, right?
Yeah, there's that for sure. Yeah, there was a power imbalance, right?
Yeah, but we are also really capable fighters. Like we know we're capable fighters, like when they harken back to, back when divorce rates were lower. And I'm like, yeah, but murder rates were higher. The amount of men that died of mysterious illnesses, because their wives were done with them. They weren't allowed to divorce them.
Well, when you bring religion into it, make it about a religious aspect, then there's no winning.
Yeah,
when you force women to acknowledge that they're subservient.
Yeah. Well, and
part of it.
In that time, like the patriarchy was rising, right? And they had armies and monarchies and priesthood and entire state systems. And I think it was a case where women didn't see it coming. This was formed, and then Mary Magdalene was out of it, and it became dominated by men. And so it was this huge army that how could women have any chance at that, And like Kori said, if you did try to rebel against it, you would be killed, burned at the stake. Like there was all sorts of terrible things.
There's also like we are complicit in our own subjugation, right? Like for at least Christian women that bought into the doctrine that we are the source of evil, that Eve tempted Adam and brought in sin. For women that believe that, they will believe, like we see it all the time in, these like sort of upright Christian women who say, like, my husband is the head of the household, and they totally allow themselves to be placed in a subservient role, and they accept it. Like we are complicit, right? And I think that the thing is not
Yeah.
necessarily that that's our natural thought process. I think it has been taught to us from very, very young, deliberately, right? Like I think that men structured the church to be this way, the teachings to be this way, so that you can teach us when we're children that we never get to be in charge. We won't ask to be in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and before internet, right? You wouldn't know any different than what you were taught,
Yeah,
because
for sure.
education is what forms and molds a society, right? And the only education, the only information you've ever been given. I mean, you look at hysteria,
Yeah.
the treatments for
Right?
it, right?
Yeah.
Like, these women didn't know. So it's
Yeah.
that's another really complex, interesting question, isn't it? So this takes me to a quote by a woman named Sylvia Federici in her book, The Taliban and the Witches. She explains it well. Quote, the execution of thousands of women as witches was not about superstition, but about destroying women's resistance to a new economic and political order. End of quote. And, I just sort of reading and poking around and looking at things and talking to women, I sort of came to the conclusion too that women resisted quietly, right? Through stories and culture and healing and community networks. Like women did bond together in many ways and survive all of this despite what we went through and what we were taught and all of those pieces, right? Midwives, herbalists, and wise women carried forbidden knowledge through oral tradition. So we passed knowledge on, we kept things alive, even though, even, in the witch burning trials, even just uttering some sort of remedy for menstrual cramps could get you burnt at the stake. Women weren't writing it down, but they were passing it through oral traditions and rebelling in the only ways I think that they could. So it's kind of an interesting thing, right? Also think about songs, think through songs and, just all those different things, even though like the church really erased a lot of that. So I think there was a quiet rebellion always.
I think it was in the like southern state slave culture where African Americans would use quilts to tell stories, and they would quilt in whether it was, I can't remember the details around it, but it was their stories, their culture, their family history, and women did this work and passed those quilts on through generations, and they were recreated and added on to. So the story was sort of embedded in these quilts, which out of that culture people weren't aware of. So a pretty resourceful way of doing what you're saying,
clever.
Zab.
Right? Yeah. So I guess what I came to in that is that in other words, women's failure to fight back militarily isn't a failure at all. It's a reminder that survival sometimes requires stealth, subtlety, and endurance over fire and blood.
Yeah. And it's a little bit like, if you fight the same way your oppressor does, are you better than your oppressor? Right? Like, and also we know we're outmatched in that type of a fight. We can't, we don't have access to governments and armies. We don't have access to physical strength. We theoretically could get weapons, but we don't, like, I think also women understand our goal isn't to decimate men, right? And we don't even want to subjugate men. We just want to be equal, right? Like we want to be equal. And so that's a different struggle, right?
Yeah, to find balance, right?
I think about women who are subjected to acts of violence from men most of the time, in the example I'm using, and the way in which they navigate that is about survival. And sometimes there's questions like, well, why didn't you fight back? But women do what they need to do to ensure their safety and their children's safety so that they can continue to exist. So I think
That's
that's
a great point. Yeah,
exactly
exactly.
what women have been so masterful at doing. You
Yeah,
know, we
absolutely.
navigate, we manage to continue.
Yeah,
Yeah. And that's a pretty apt
Mhm.
comparison because really, like,
it
we've
is.
been in an abusive relationship with like the government and men and like people in charge
Yeah.
and power for hundreds, if not thousands of years, right? And
Yeah.
so it is a reasonable and understandable and logical response to be quiet
Yeah.
resistors.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in all of that, the next question that came up for me was, why do intelligent women who know all of this join religion? Why would they do that? Because
Mhm.
I know some really
Mhm.
smart women
Yeah.
that I admire, kind, loving, good women that I'd want to stand by me in any kind of situation because I know they'd have my back. And my question was, why the hell are you Catholic?
Yeah.
Why are you
Well,
Christian? What's going on here, man?
and
You
I
know?
think, like anything, religion's subjective. And I think there's
Yeah.
a lot of powerhouse women who are, you know, in the forefront in organized religions who are pushing through to share their interpretation of the Bible or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And I appreciate those women who are there to do that. God bless them, right?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
'Cause certainly
You
like the
totally
Book of
nailed
Mary
that.
ain't coming in through the effort of
Yeah.
men.
Yeah.
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 For sure. Yeah. And I mean, for many women, it's like tied to their, you know, their family, their traditions, everything that they have ever known. I interviewed a
Mhm.
couple of these women that I'm talking about that I admire, and I asked them this hard question, and they sat down and they took time. And, you know, it was, they believe in the teaching of Jesus and they believe in the good in him and what he wanted, but they don't discount the feminine. They see that there as well. And they were really educated on the things that we're talking about. Like they knew all that stuff existed. There was a woman that I ran into when I was doing all this, like I read about, her name is Sister Elizabeth Johnson. She's really interesting and she kind of like definitely summarizes this pretty good. She argues that women can reclaim figures like Eve, Mary Magdalene, and the female saints as role models, even if the hierarchy resists. Johnson wrote, quote, "Women need not abandon the church. We must transform it," end of quote. And I thought, you know, how interesting,
Mhm.
you know, to work from the inside out. You know, if
Yeah.
you're really strong in your belief system and that means everything to you, that is the smartest place to position yourself, isn't it?
I was just going to say, like, we want male feminists because they're the ones who have access to power where change happens. We need it to happen from the inside, right? So it's the same idea. You need female
Mhm.
believers to make change in the church, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So super interesting. This lady, you know, she's a sister, but she's also like a strong feminist. And I watched a podcast that hosted her. It's called Homebrewed Christianity. And they interviewed Elizabeth Johnson, and she's a theologian. And she's been dubbed as one of the best in her field, specializing in feminist theology and what it looks like when put into practice within the church and the classroom. She talks openly about the death that surrounds the church, including the witch burnings. And she, I believe, she runs a college or a university and teaches theology. Now, she's a really, really interesting progressive nun, which I thought was because I didn't even know that women still went in to become nuns. I think that's kind of a dying.
I don't
Mhm.
think it's as common, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
No,
pretty rare now. Yeah.
no, at all.
especially
Yeah.
in the Western world here. Yeah. So did she speak to the struggles of that? Like, is she feel like she's successful in sort of rephrasing scripture?
I think that she acknowledges the work that needs to be done, which is very like, from what I
Mhm.
saw of her, she was a very humble person who, you know, just is trying to use her platform to do to teach people a better way.
Mhm.
Yeah, but you should definitely watch that podcast episode with her, and yeah, just see what she's all about. A really, really interesting woman. Hmm.
It kind of
Yeah.
makes me think of I have some friends that are Indigenous, and even someone who's a residential school survivor who is very much involved in the Catholic faith. And that, yeah, that took me a bit to wrap my head around. And I don't yuck anyone's yum. Like, I respect people's choices and their paths, but it really took me a bit to find some peace with that.
Yeah,
Yeah, so interesting.
yeah,
Religion's just, it's such a powerful thing. Faith is such
yeah,
a powerful thing.
yeah.
It drives people to do the nastiest of nasty things, and it also brings like such incredible love out of people who have no
Hmm.
reason to, in a sense, in that
Yeah.
situation, right?
Well, it is such an
Yeah.
incredible sense of community, I think, when you belong to a church. All of the gatherings and support from one another, it seems like
Hmm.
really amazing in that. I can see why people would really want to be embraced by that as well. It's very interesting. Yeah. So it started to become clear to me that restoring the feminine helps everyone. Let me explain. Restoring the feminine is not about giving power solely to the female, but about balance. Women need to reclaim strength without shame, and men must reconnect with emotion without fear of ridicule. A lady named Bell Hooks, her book, The Will to Change, Men, Masculinity, and Love, wrote, quote, "The first act of violence the patriarchy demands of males is not violence towards women. Instead, patriarchy demands of all males that they engage in acts of psychic self-mutilation, that they kill off the emotional parts of themselves." End of quote. How powerful is that?
Yeah.
Like that is,
Hmm.
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens to men in the patriarchal society, and it's
Yeah.
awful. And
Yeah.
it leads
Yeah.
to
That's what I was
so
referring to
much
when
of
I
the
say
violence.
men are cut in half, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You brought that up earlier. Yeah. You totally hit the nail on the head with that.
Mhm.
Historian Rion Eisler in The Chalice and the Blade argues partnership cultures where women and men share power were less oriented towards dominion and war. I should have said quote at the beginning of that. So end of quote, quote, quote. The suppression of women went hand in hand with the rise of violence. So yeah, you were talking about that, Kori. Like, so she's saying that partnership cultures where women and men shared power, they were less oriented towards war. Makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Balance.
And an interesting fact, according to a UN Women's Global Study on the implementation of Security Council resolution, peace agreements are 20% more likely to last at least 2 years when women are involved in the negotiation process, and 35% more likely to
Hmm.
last over 15 years or more under the same circumstances. The Council on Foreign Relations cited the same UN data. This echoes this finding as a concise summary,
Hmm.
right? 20%,
Bam.
that's huge,
That's that's
right?
really good. That's a good mic
Yeah.
drop there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Hmm.
Adrienne Rich, the poet that I cited before, she says, quote, "The suppressed history of women has been the history of humanity itself. The future demands that both masculine and feminine are honored in everyone. End of quote. So that's huge. It's huge, right? Men embracing their feminine, women embracing their masculine, no one being afraid to be whomever they need to be, being put in these societal boxes.
I love how in so many Indigenous communities, two-spirited people were just like, no big whoop, it's, well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I mean, no big whoop as in it was not like, oh my God, how could
Frowned
this happen?
upon.
They're not male, not
Yeah.
female.
Yeah.
No big whoop is in, it's just, but they were also revered. They were also like, wow, this person's got this amazing balance of them, the knowledge they carry. Yeah, more proof there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Societies are definitely stronger when we have balance.
So my next question was, how might society have been if women had not been cast as temptress or sinners, but instead remembered as and honored as goddesses, life givers, and spiritual leader? Massive question again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One would hope we would not be in the pickle we're in now, and our environment would be happy.
Yep.
There'd be a lot more peace in the world.
Absolutely.
It's also a hard one to answer
more balanced
because
leadership.
Yeah, we don't have that experience where it's like fictional, right? This is where the work of science fiction authors like Ursula K. Le Guin, where they get to like re-envision societies with different gender roles. Yeah, it's a hard one.
Although if you look at nature, if
Yeah.
you look at nature and when you do have balance, right, things seem to flow. So if the feminine and the masculine were balanced, perhaps, difference being we're humans and there's some innate flaw in humans that cause us to be on some sort of self-destructive pathway. So
right.
And women fall into that as well, right? I mean,
we're
that's
not
not just an exclusively male attribute. So I think regardless, we would run into some issues.
Absolutely.
I agree.
We would, for sure. I think though that the issue becomes the balance. There isn't balance in either sexes, right? Or any of the sexes because of all of this, So yeah, probably like more equal governance. Like if women had held positions of authority in kingdoms, governments, councils, like Cleopatra or Elizabeth I. Instead of that being the exception, maybe it would have been the rule, right? Of course, like I think about sexuality, right?
Yeah.
Female sexuality would not be shamed, controlled, tied to sin. That would be
everybody would be having a better time, right?
right. Exactly. Party time. I think about body image, right? Like the way that women view their bodies. That would be different, much different, I think. I think of medical care for women would be much different. Like we lost so much knowledge in the witch burnings. So much knowledge that would have been incredibly helpful. In fact, I think it would be an interesting podcast topic to talk about that. Like after the witch burnings, how many women were passing away through childbirth as comparatively to before that, right? Like when, I don't know if there would be documentation of that because it's about women and that didn't seem to be documented very well, but
there is
it would be a
documentation
very interesting thing to look into.
There is documentation of when obstetrics became a male-dominated field because it was always in the realm of midwives and wise women that would help deliver and help women labor. As soon as it became a paid medical field, men dominated that field, pushed women out of it. Then that's like mid 1800s, right? So there is documentation to show how that affected women, how that affected birth outcomes. And you're right, it wasn't good, right? It was much more intervention, much more controlling the woman, making her lie down, making her sit still, making her make it easier for the doctor, as opposed to facilitating her doing this natural process, right? But yeah, because this is one of the things I want to look at is medicine and how the rise of like medical interventions like affected women and affected society as a whole, but like the male domination of medical practice, because kind of traditionally it was female and then it switched, right?
Yeah. So interesting, isn't it? I also think about the crone and how older women are looked at. That would be very
Yeah,
different, I believe, as well.
yeah, for
Mhm.
sure.
I think that
That's
the older woman
undeniable.
would be more revered.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
in short, if women had remained in their original roles as goddesses of life and equals in spirit, we'd likely live in a more balanced spiritual landscape, societies with less hierarchical oppression, economies rooted in care, sustainability, and community, and cultures where women's bodies, voices, and wisdoms are seen as holy, not sinful.
Hmm.
So then I asked myself, are there lots of modern matriarchies and female leaders, like, that we can see in the modern world? And I'll give a few examples of that. And then if I missed anything, you guys can add to that. Iceland is a really progressive place. They're number one in gender equality in the world, with women holding strong political roles since 1980s. They're, as I said, ranked number one in gender equality by the World Economic Forum, and that it's been that way for over a decade. Its women-led parliament and policies on parental leave, equal pay, and representation have transformed society. Paula Toom's daughter is Iceland's second female president. Then I looked at in New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern was the prime minister there from 2017 to 2023, and her leadership was grounded in empathy. Indigenous matriarchs in Canada, ongoing movements led by Indigenous women challenged pipelines, land theft, and colonization, echoing the ancient role of women as protectors of life. The Khasi people of India continue matrilineal traditions, and in Rwanda, women hold over 60% of parliamentary seats. And I was kind of like, what? Why in Rwanda? That's not what I would have thought, but it's actually due to the 1994 genocide, which killed a large portion of the men, creating a demographic imbalance with significantly more women than men. The presence of women in parliament has supported other progressive legislation, such as equal access to land ownership and promoting gender equality in the workplace. So they wouldn't have been in that position if it hadn't been for the war, but then in the position, they're
It's a
doing
silver lining.
some really great things. Yeah. I believe that these examples show women's roles as leaders are not in the past. I think we can all agree that the reason so few women were recognized is truly because their stories were just not told. They were silent. And behind every great man, there is a great woman. This is a fact. The whispers of women, they've always been here. And it's interesting, that quote isn't referenced to any one person. Behind every successful man is a good woman. It's kind of a
Interesting.
universal thing. Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah. There's no.
Simone de Beauvoir, the writer, said it perfectly. If so few female geniuses are found in history, it is because society denies them any means of expression. That's pretty accurate, hey?
Mhm.
So, what do you think, gals? Can you think of anyone else or anything else you want to say around modern day role models or female role models?
Tons. I just think like Albert Einstein's wife was a master physicist, you know, like there's people that credit her for some of his work. one of the quotes I heard that made me laugh out loud was, if you stop teaching women to write or to stop making women literate, who's going to write all the men's books for them? And it was just,
Yeah.
Nice.
like this idea that like our knowledge has often been stolen too, right? Like
Mhm.
we write it and
Mhm.
men take credit for it. Either we are
Mhm.
complicit in it or it's stolen involuntarily. And by complicit, I don't mean happy about it, right? But like recognizing the power structures or being bullied into it that like they won't take you seriously.
Yeah.
The amount of women that had to use men's names, right? To get
Mhm.
Mhm.
recognized.
Yeah, exactly.
So
There's so many examples of women that have done incredibly heroic things. Like, I remember on our socials, you did that one about the witches, in Germany,
yeah, the night witches.
the night witches. Yeah. Like, I didn't know about
Yeah.
that. So many examples.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that at the Soviet Union is one of the places where they allowed female combat soldiers in World War II, right? And it really helped. And I think sort of like Rwanda, it's a case where the Soviet Union had the highest death toll by far, in the war. And so, it makes sense that they needed more bodies, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
So having women soldiers, I should say they had the highest death toll, I think, among the Allies. I suspect Germany had the highest death toll altogether, but I don't know. But
Mhm.
they had really, really high losses because the Soviet Union's method has often been throw bodies at it, right? Like they will
Yeah.
sacrifice their people for the win, and so you need people to fight, and women are willing, capable fighters, and they did not hesitate to make use of them, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's yeah, women are when we're given opportunities, we rise, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I always like to keep it local too and look around me. I appreciate,
Mhm.
you know, historical figures and whatnot, but through my social work, I meet so many women who are single
Yeah,
moms, for example, and they are against incredible odds. They are pulling through. They're teaching their kids. They're providing for their children on their own,
yeah,
and role modeling amazing things for the next generation to come. And I think about also in my community here, um, some older women who are involved in nature conservancy
Mhm.
and out there volunteering their time,
yeah,
educating, and a lot of that is with younger generations, trying to light
yeah,
them up around
Mhm.
uh, environmental issues and championing local, watershed issues or whatever it may be. Um, I think too often we look too broad and want
Yeah.
something a little bit bigger, but it's like it's like that quilt I was talking about.
Mhm.
It's the everyday actions that women do that are actually the champions we should be celebrating the most.
yeah. That's a beautiful
Absolutely.
example, Corey. Well said.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah,
very well said. I'm glad that you you brought that up because it is so important. There's so many amazing women around us that do incredible things every day and expect nothing in
Yeah.
return for it. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. And you don't have to be written in the history books to matter, right? Like you don't
No,
have to
Exactly.
be.
no, absolutely not.
Everybody matters. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody matters for sure. And what a feminist perspective there, Corey.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
right.
try.
Yeah, you're here. You're here. So, in conclusion, the goddess was erased to serve patriarchy, but she never disappeared. She lived in folklore, in the resilience of women, in quiet practices, and in stories of warrior queens and healers. By remembering her, we remember ourselves. Today, the work is in rewriting not only history, but possibility. The goddess is slowly being restored, and with this, our collective wholeness. Men reclaiming the feminine means they can embrace empathy, care, and intuition, and women reclaiming the masculine means they can embody assertiveness, strategy, and command without shame. This can only benefit all of mankind. This brings me full
Mhm.
circle to my original thought about the yin and the yang. This is an ancient Chinese philosophical concept describing how seemingly opposite forces are actually complementary, interconnected, and interdependent, creating a dynamic balance and harmony in the natural world and in human life. Yin is often associated with femininity, darkness, passivity, and the moon, while yang embodies masculinity, light, activity, and the sun. The iconic symbol illustrates this duality, showing a circle divided into black, which is the yin, and white, the yang halves, with a dot of the opposite color in each section, symbolizing that each contains the seed of the other and that neither can exist without the other,
Mhm. It's a
right?
beautiful symbol. It really is.
Balance.
Yeah.
The balance. And it's so interesting to me because when I was in my 20s, I got a tattoo on my ankle that was the yin and the yang. And my reason for it was I wanted to achieve balance of the body, mind, and soul in my lifetime. But the piece that I missed from that was about embracing not only my femininity, but my masculinity. And in doing this,
Mhm.
that was something that came to me. So interesting.
Yeah. That's super cool. That's super cool. Yeah, it's funny how you can like look
Mhm.
back on your actions and be like, that actually has a far deeper impact than I realized.
Mhm.
That's so cool. That was really well done, Zab. That was a really good breakdown. Really interesting and like went all over the place, right? Really, really
Yeah.
spanned the
Yeah.
globe.
Very
Sure did.
ADHD of
Yeah.
me.
Well done, Zab. Thank you.
That was
Yeah,
amazing.
I
Thank you. So we should remind people that if they like what they heard, that they should like us. They should follow us on all our socials at Murder of Crones on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook. We are up on YouTube where you can watch this. And if you subscribe to us on whatever podcast app you're listening to, that's really great. It gives us tons of support. And if you leave us a positive review, that helps us find more viewers and help other people hear our messages.
Please do. Yes. And thanks for listening. And tell friends to listen as well if you enjoyed it.
We would like to thank our sponsors, Denison Design, for allowing me to use this beautiful space to record the podcast today. They are interior designers located in Vancouver and Castlegar, BC. And in Castlegar, they also have a storefront. It's absolutely stunning. They do custom millwork, and they're both just two powerhouse women. And if you want to check them out, you can look them up at www.denisondesign.com.
Awesome.
There we go. I don't know, man.
Thanks,
That was
everybody.
good. Thank you.
All right.
It was awesome.
Thanks
Zab.
for
That was
listening.
great.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye.